Facebook Live on the CBC News Facebook page, as well as on our YouTube channel, and you can join in. Hannah is with us now on CBC News Network. We got all that covered? I think we've got all of that covered, more or less. Okay, so Hannah, we are up and running on Facebook right now, and our viewers, they can log on to the page that we're showing on the screen right now. But while we wait for them to join in, tell us about where you are right now and what it's like there.
Right, so there are two things that happen on a federal budget day, Andrew, and audience on Facebook and YouTube. What it is a lot of journalists will go into a lockup. That lockup starts early in the morning, so they will go through the federal budget and have their stories written. So when the budget is actually tabled and the finance minister stands on his feet, they can be ready to deliver to the viewers exactly what is in the budget. I am not in the budget, but as of the past bit, we've been gathering information as to what we'll find in that budget. So I'm out in the foyer of the House of Commons, and you can see the foyer isn't always this busy. Just take a look around me. We have producer Chris Rand sitting right here.
Hi, everybody.
There's all of the television cameras. That's for all of the different networks across Canada, French and English. There's also radio, but I'm going to take you over this way a little bit so you can see right behind me, Andrew, and there's cables everywhere, so I might kind of trip and fall a couple times, so my apologies ahead of time for that. See those stairs behind me? That's where the finance minister and the prime minister will come down. We've seen this shot year after year. They come down, they smile, they hold up the booklet. We'll see the cover for the first time and what it will look like, and then they go into the House of Commons. But it's only when the finance minister stands in the House of Commons can we actually report on what has happened, because there is a strict embargo, which means we cannot report anything until the finance minister is on his feet. So that's what we're waiting for.
And I think, Hannah, one of those reasons is that this goes way back. They like the markets to close so that there's not an influence on the market. So it's that kind of thing. So it's usually at 4 p.m. Eastern Time when the Toronto Stock Exchange closes for the day. All right, so Hannah, I'm going to mix in some of our questions that we have for you, but also I have a really great question here from David Jameson, and he wants to know, you did get at this a little bit earlier, but what is a gender-based budget?
Yeah, this is interesting, and a lot of people have been asking this all throughout the day. Let's be frank, when I first heard this was a gender-based budget, I'm like, what is that? What exactly do you mean by a gender-based budget? Well, let me try to explain, because we've heard it over and over again from the Prime Minister and the Finance Minister. We've heard over the past couple of years that the Liberals were focusing on the middle class. That was the mantra for the Liberals. This time, they're really narrowing into women and getting women into the workforce. So focusing on women to ensure that there aren't any boundaries for them. So when it comes to having kids, for example, they're going to implement and put in, it's called a take it or leave it leave. So that's for example, a father or the other parent who may want to take time off during the time that they have the baby, but they don't want to penalize the time that the mother has. So it's going to be something like 5 weeks. So maybe the mother can go back and transition easily into work so that the dad can stay home or the other parent can stay home, those types of things. So getting them into the workforce, using them in different areas of the workforce, because there actually is a work shortage in Canada. What the government is saying is they don't have enough immigrants coming in. There's an aging workforce, so they need to find that workforce elsewhere. And that, by putting women in those roles, then that means there's better productivity when it comes to the economy.
All right, so that's a very tangible example that I think will make a lot of sense to a lot of people, is this paternity, maternity leave balancing out, right? Yeah. So this comes from Alan Wood, and this is a really basic question, and this is a question I think a lot of people will want to know. Is Morneau expected to lower or increase the tax burden this time?
If you're talking about personal taxes, when it comes to your own, he means personal taxes. I don't expect to see any changes in personal taxes. At this point, you know, I'm not in the lockup, but as reporters, we start to get hints about what's in the budget weeks in advance, because they actually want to project what's in there, because if they give it all at once, then not everything gets big play. So that's why we probably heard about the pharmacare issue yesterday, because of the fact they want to get big play on that, because there's going to be something else in the budget they want to get big play on today. I haven't heard anything about personal income taxes going down at that point. It's not to say that it won't. You have to stay tuned, because of course when the budget comes out at 4, Rosie Barton will have all of those details, but that's something that hasn't been projected as of yet.
Okay, this comes from Charles Rocco Thomas, and he says, is it true that we are paying off, this is the question, is it true that we are paying off the deficit faster than expected?
Yes.
And that's an interesting question, and I think the answer to that question is yes, right?
Yes. As of the fall economic update, yes, it was being paid down faster than expected. But remember, this is something you hear from the Conservatives a lot, really slamming the Liberals on this, because the Liberals promised a maximum deficit of $10 billion per year, and then having that paid down by 2019. Don't expect that to be paid down this time around either, because there's still about $20 billion left to be paid off. But if they were to bring that down to zero, they'd essentially have to cut out all spending. So yes, it is coming down faster because of the good economic circumstances that Canada is in at this present time. However, it's not down as far as they promised in their 2015 election campaign.
Hannah, I know that you talked about this at the top of the show, but I think we should get back at this, because Adam Shane, this is what he says.
Okay.
Bring on pharmacare. That's a good start. So let's talk a little bit about where the government is when it comes to pharmacare, because this is the beginning, the very beginning of it all.
It is. They have had discussions for a while, though, Andrew, and let me take you a little bit back on this. So, pharmacare, yes, this is something that we are going to see in this budget. This was really the surprise for us as reporters. When it comes to pharmacare, what we're going to see in this budget is a National Advisory Council. What this council will do, it's headed by Eric Hoskins, the former Health Minister of Ontario. It'll travel across the country. It'll talk to advisory groups. It will talk to provinces. It will talk to Indigenous leaders. And what they'll do is come back with a plan. They'll come back with a plan for this pharmacare program, a national pharmacare program. It'll come back with costs. It'll come back with how it will work. The government wants that back by 2019 in time to put it in the next budget, in time to have it ready to sell in an election campaign. However, let me tell you a little bit of background on this. The Health Committee here on Parliament Hill has been studying this for almost 2 years. This is what they're, it's a little bit interesting. They have had 99 witnesses. They have 31 briefs on their website about this. And what it is that they have been specifically looking at pharmacare for that length of time. They haven't put out their full report yet, but we do know that they will be meeting again in March, and that is likely for an interim report. So I think they're hoping that this study will also involve them.
All right, Robert. I hope I'm not going to mispronounce his last name, but McHugh or McCough, I'm going to say Robert McHugh maybe, is asking this. How about our military and veterans? Because Hannah, you and I have spoken a lot about veterans who feel, there's a group of veterans who feel as though they aren't being properly compensated because of the time that they served versus other veterans. Lots of talk around that. There's so much talk around fighter jets and money for fighter jets. When are we going to get the fighter jets? What fighter jets are we eventually going to get? There's concern, around the Sea King helicopters. There's been concern around the subs. So there's a basic question for you. Do you know anything about spending on military and veterans?
So, spending on military and veterans, we haven't heard anything in particular. I am sure there will be something in the budget, whether it's big or small. Probably not big, because as I've been saying on the network all day, a lot of big ticket items are going to be saved until next year, leading into the election campaign. All governments tend to do this. They put them as kind of candy for the electorate coming out. One thing, and Murray Brewster, our very good defense reporter, is in the lockup right now. He will have all of those details. I unfortunately don't know of any spending as of yet, but we do know there will be hundreds of millions of dollars spent on cybersecurity, and that also includes defense, because you got to look at it from a bunch of different ways. They do spy, so money will be given to spy on potential terrorists to stop that. So that is part of a defense program as well. But also, when it comes to the next election campaign, we saw what happened in the United States when it came to the Russians infiltrating their electoral process. Well, Canada wants to make sure something like that doesn't happen here, and that's where some of that money will go as well. So hundreds of millions of dollars for cybersecurity when it comes to veterans, when it comes to specifics on fighter jets, those types of things. I'm afraid we'll have to wait until we get the budget.
All right, Hannah, thank you very much. We're going to let you go, but you will continue taking some questions on Facebook for the next little while, and you can find Hannah on Facebook.com/CBC News.
Hey everyone, welcome to Facebook Live. I'm continuing here in the foyer of the House of Commons, where we will be broadcasting live in a short time from now, telling you what is going to be in the federal budget 2018. This is the third budget for Finance Minister Bill Morneau, and so we're taking your questions. We just took some on the network, also on Facebook Live, and now we're going to do it again here just on Facebook Live. So continue to send those questions. We will answer them, and I am going to just take a look here to see what questions we have from people. So I did get an email question, and see, you can send them anyway. Here's this one. This person's name is Eric from Hammerfest, Norway. Hammerfest, Norway, thank you for watching. His sister lives in Ottawa, and we'd love to know why the government of Canada is focusing on feminism rather than dealing with the deficits. Thank you for your question, Eric. We kind of answered this a little bit earlier on, that they're focusing on this. They're focusing on women in the economy because they feel that they need to get more women in there in good paying jobs and leadership roles in science and technology. And to do that, that helps with the productivity of the economy in general. So that's what you're going to hear from the government in explaining that. When it comes to deficits, they have decided that they're going to invest in programs so that they can help spur on the economy. That is something that the government has done for the Liberal government since they came into power in 2015, and it seems like they're going to continue to do that. When they will pay that down, I don't think that's top of mind for this government at this point in time, because it's about $20 billion, I think, for the federal to build up for the books. I think it's somewhere around there. I'm asking my producer, Chris. Chris is supposed to know all these exact numbers for me, but look, he didn't know the number.
No, I was jumping ahead to the next question.
He's jumping ahead to the next question.
Which is about spending.
Okay, so when it comes to that, they aren't going to focus on that, I don't believe, not in this budget. Maybe they'll start to later. However, with the economy and it being in a good stance at this point, in the last fall economic update, they did actually, the deficit did go down more than they expected. So, hope that answered your question, Eric. We have another question. So we're going to take this question from Alana Larson. Alana Larson is asking, how much is this budget going to cost us? That is a great question. Unfortunately, I don't know the total cost of this budget. We do have people in the lockup right now. For this budget, I'm expecting there aren't going to be a lot of new expenditures in it. And the reason for that is this is the third budget for Finance Minister for Finance Minister Bill Morneau. Jim Flaherty was a finance minister under the Conservative government, so I'm getting all my finance ministers in there. But I don't know the total spending of this budget. That's only something that we'll find out when it's actually released and tabled at 4 p.m. Eastern. Okay, Marilyn Shen asks, anything for seniors? We have no affordable housing. That's a really good question, Marilyn. The reason for that is, yes, I do expect to see some money for housing and affordable housing in this budget. How it's going to be doled out, that is a good question, and hopefully there will be more details in that. But yes, we have heard that housing is a priority, especially for low-income Canadians, and we do expect to see some money in the budget for that. Okay, Chris?
Okay, so Joanne, I'm trying to pronounce that, but...
Okay. Joanne, I'm sorry if I mess up your last name. Joanne Klobel asks, how about incentives for workplace daycare? This would provide such strong support for parents. You know, Joanne, that is a really good idea. I hear that from a lot of people, that they'd like to see a workplace daycare. But what I think the federal government is focusing on this time is that take it or leave it incentive. That take it or leave it incentive, or use it or lose it incentive, is one that allows fathers or non-birth parents to get time off with benefits. So if they want to take, and I think it's going to end up being 5 weeks for the father or the non-birth parent, if they want to take 5 weeks off like they have in Quebec, then they can do so, and that won't affect the mother's time off, which now if a dad or a non-birth parent wants to take time off, it'll come out of the mother's time off. So this is going to be 5 weeks for them. If there is anything else on daycare, again, this is something that I'll have to wait and see, because I haven't seen the budget. These are all just things that we've heard before the budget actually comes out.
And the next question is, how much money for healthcare from YouTube?
Oh, how much money for healthcare? Well, that is $1 million question, because for Canadians, it's really important to know how their healthcare will be funded. I don't have an answer to that. I do sort of have an answer to what new incentives they will be given. They will be given looking towards a national pharmacare program, so that is a cost that the federal government will take on, but we won't know how much that will actually cost until the National Advisory Council talks to the provinces, talks to advisory groups, talks to First Nations to see exactly how it will be implemented. As for healthcare in general, that is something they had given money in the past for mental health. The provinces just worked on those negotiations in the past couple of years. That's one thing, but if there's going to be additional money, don't know that as of yet. Hopefully I gave you a little bit of an answer there.
Okay, the next question is from Owen Kwan, who asks, will there be any money allocated to environmental...
Oh, this is a really good question. Okay, so Owen Kwan, will there be any money allocated to environmental initiatives in climate action? Yes, we are expecting to see more money, and the money is for making sure there are conservation areas so that these areas are protected. That's what we expect to see the money designated for at this time. So yes, to your question, other areas, I'm sure there are going to be other things in there. There are so many little tidbits in a budget that, yes, I expect to see more. But conservation areas, we'll give you all those details when it comes down, again, at 4 o'clock. But yes, I do expect that.
Okay, next question is from Aaron, who's asking about any plans for student debt problems.
Ooh, that's a really good question. Aaron, I don't know Aaron's last name. Any plans for student debt problems? You know what? Again, I haven't heard anything. Chris, have you?
I haven't. I mean, part of the thing is that university spending is provincial, so it depends.
Yeah, but how to handle those debt loads for students, that's a really interesting question, Aaron. But like Chris was saying, it's provincial. However, the federal government always says it wants to help out students. It always wants to help them get jobs, especially to pay for their university, college, whatever type of degree or diploma they get. So maybe there will be some type of incentive or help for students afterwards. Again, we'll keep an eye out.
Okay, and we need to go back and reset it and just tell people why.
Okay.
What the big picture is.
I'm just going to remind people why I'm here. I'm here covering the federal budget. I'm going to give you a little show and tell. I'm actually in the foyer of the House of Commons. I'm not in the lockup. This is a lockup they call, where all the journalists go ahead of time to get a briefing on what is in the federal budget. So behind me, this is where all of the action will take place once that lockup is over. You can see all of the cameras. These are all the networks, the radio stations. Let's go over this way. Mark is doing a wonderful job behind the camera there, helping me out. Behind there, those are the stairs where you always see the finance minister and the prime minister come down with one of these. This is not not today's budget, by the way. This is 2017 budget. They come down, they hold the budget in their hand, they take that official photo, they go in the House of Commons. Once the finance minister is on his feet, that's when we can report what's in it. So let me remind you some of the items that we have heard are going to be in the federal budget. The big thing is the National Pharmacare Program. We won't see the details of the Pharmacare Program or how much it will cost. What they're doing is setting up a National Advisory Council. This National Advisory Council will go across Canada, figure out all those questions, and heading that National Advisory Council is Eric Hoskins. He is the former Ontario Health Minister. He'll go across, he'll figure all this out. He has experience in pharmacare programs in Ontario, where they have now 4,400 drugs covered for anyone under the age of 25, but also he has that relationship with the provinces, and the provinces can help with this, getting this implemented. So he'll come back, he's been asked to come back before the next budget in 2019 to bring forward that proposal so they can include it in there. So that's a pretty big deal, because we hadn't heard up until that point that the Liberals were going to move on this. There were studies in the House of Commons. The NDP have always been big proponents of a national pharmacare program, so they now feel that this was kind of stolen out from underneath them, this big pitch, and I bet you they were going to go into the next election campaign pitching this. That's one thing. We also know that when it comes to Indigenous peoples, there is going to be money in there for the child welfare system, because there have been these big gaps between what they get and it's just something that the Human Rights Tribunal had pointed out a couple of years ago. Now, the NDP have been calling for at least $155 million per year to close that gap. There will also be more money for housing and for water. There will be hundreds of millions of dollars for cybersecurity. And this is just some of the things that we have found out about what's in the federal budget that will be tabled shortly.
Okay, Hannah, so we've got 4 new questions.
Okay.
A couple subjects that we dealt with before. Veterans.
Yes, so Donna Hussey, will there be tax relief for middle class with grown children? We kind of were talking about this a little bit earlier. Tax relief or tax cuts, just income tax cuts, we don't expect to see anything like that. That could be a surprise when they come out, but that hasn't been telegraphed to us at this point. Dawson Markle asks, how does the federal budget reflect Canada's commitment to meeting the UN Sustainable Development Goals, increases to ODA? That's a really complicated question, and it's a really good question. And I hate to keep saying this and being repetitive, but I only know so much. I only know so much of what's in the budget at this point. I'm going to take a little glass of water because I'm doing all the talking. I only know so much because I'm not actually in the lockup at this time. Good question. We will look into this, and of course you have to remember we'll have all of the details as soon as that release. Will there be money going towards pushing the BC pipeline through so we can end the BC-Alberta trade war? Well, that is a very fascinating question, because the federal government doesn't want to see any more delays on the Trans Mountain pipeline. They say those decisions have been made, that BC should not be stopping this pipeline from going through. This is what Alberta thinks. But throwing money at it, I'm not sure if BC will get money. It would be very interesting to see if they were paid to stop, so-called stopping the pipeline from going through. That is something that we'll definitely have our eye on when the budget is released.
Joff is asking about mortgage interest rates being affected by the budget.
Yeah. Rebar Jaff asks, will the budget have any implications on interest rates or mortgage rates? Again, these are a lot of questions that unfortunately I can't answer until the budget comes out. But mortgage rates, one of the things, and interest rates, one of the things that we've seen from this government is trying to cool off the housing market, both in British Columbia, in Vancouver in particular, and in the Toronto area, by increasing the amount that people have to make for a down payment. So by cooling off the the markets, that can actually bring up the interest rates as it has over the last. And Chris is talking about something else. Chris, he's a wealth of information.
Well,
this is Chris Rams.
Just Hannah.
You don't have a mic on.
No, and that's why I'm going to come in close. The reason why the budget happens at 4 o'clock is, of course, markets close in New York and Toronto, so there is time, even though there are worldwide markets, for the markets to digest whatever happens in the budget, and that's why we're dealing with this huge embargo thing every year.
And that was one thing, yeah, you were mentioning, Andrew was mentioning when we were on the news network as well, that's why they have such a strict embargo when it comes to the budget. It's because they don't want to fluctuate the markets, and that's when the markets close in Toronto at 4 p.m. and the finance minister knows exactly when to stand on his feet.
Elizabeth Hicks, do we know what will be in the defense plan?
Yeah, Elizabeth Hicks, I just want to respond to this. Do we know what will be in the defense plan? That is a good question. We answered something similar to that a little bit earlier, but in case you missed it, when it comes to defense spending, we're waiting. We have our very own Murray Brewster, who is our defense guru. He knows everything inside and out. He's in fact in the budget right now, and he broke a story earlier this week that there will be hundreds of millions of dollars for cybersecurity. That's one of the big things. You may say that's not defense spending, but in fact, a big chunk of it does go to defense for security of we have huge network systems that run this whole country, from banks to pipelines to water to everything. So those are the types of things that they do protect. But other specifics, our very own Murray Brewster will have more of that a little bit later.
And Hannah, we've got a question from YouTube, and I should just say that we're starting to run out of time, so we'll be wrapping things up in a minute or two here. But this is about equalization payments for provinces in need.
Right.
But it mentions Alberta and Newfoundland and Labrador.
So, as Chris was just saying, we are going to wrap soon, so if you have a question, I'm trying to get them all in, and lots of great questions coming in. I didn't even have to pitch throughout this to get more questions because you have tons of them. Question from YouTube, is there anything about changes to equalization payments for provinces in need? They mentioned, as Chris was saying, Alberta and Newfoundland and Labrador. When it comes to equalization payments, again, this is something that all of our team in the budget is looking at, but we hadn't heard anything. And a lot of the times, and again, I'll come back to the fact that a lot of the times the government and the finance minister talks ahead with the different provinces to say, look, you can expect this, you can expect that, and those sometimes leak out. So we haven't heard anything like that as of yet, but we'll keep our eye on that, and hopefully we can get you all of these answers a little bit later.
Okay. Well, Colton Evans is trying to get another question in there.
Colton Evans already got a question in, yes?
Well, he's the last question so far.
Okay. I'm just checking to see. Colton Evans asks, will there be any additional support for assisting small businesses and the minimum wage increase that happened, and will it happen again in 2019? Okay, Colton Evans, you're talking about the minimum wage that was increased in Ontario. That's a provincial thing, and the next minimum wage increase is supposed to happen in 2019. I do follow provincial politics too. This is not a federal politics thing. When it comes to the minimum wage, that's going to be up to the provincial government. So some of the conservative candidates in this have said that they would not do the next increase because they feel that it hurts small businesses. When it comes to small business tax rates, that is something that the federal government can help out with. And in the past, they have indicated that's something they're going to look at. So I think that's it for questions today. Let me just take a look. I just want to make sure I am not missing anybody on the list. Okay,
but they've got to stay tuned to CBC News Network and CBC National Radio News.
See, he's really good at promoting people. Let me just show you what's happening over here right now. That's Amarjeet Sohi. He's a cabinet minister, of course. He's taking questions, and what's happening coming down the stairs right now, this is leading into question period before the federal budget is tabled. We still have question period before everything happens, the big show here in the foyer. But right now, I'm ending this big show. I want to thank everybody for their questions on Federal Budget 2018. Thanks for joining us here on Facebook Live, and hope you stay tuned. Rosemary Barton will have a special a little bit later. We'll have it on the National, we'll have it on National Radio. We've got you covered everywhere, so stick with CBC.
We're still up. So.
Now I can check mine.
Yep. I assume your mic's still hot.